Alright, so it is new bike day here at Everyday MTV. As you can see, it's a Canyon. Let's dig in. Whenever I'm looking at a new bike with mail order bikes like Canyon, I always like to look at kind of how they did the packing and what tools they include and all that stuff. So we're going to dive into that. As you can see here, it looks like it's packed in here pretty nicely. So I'm going to set the camera down here and we'll get things pulled out. So here it is. This is a Canyon, Grand Canyon. All right, so before we get to the bike itself, let's take a look. I think this is one of our goodie boxes here. So kind of a cool little black background here and a little mesh tool bag actually. It's pretty cool. Okay, so here's our stuff. Let's take a look at what we got in here. All right, so we've got some manuals, quick start guide, usual stuff that comes from component manufacturers here, general manual, dropper post manual. All right, then as far as tools here, we have cone wrench, some pedals, a shock pump. This is something that I have seen not included with some online purchase bikes. And if you're going to include air suspension, I think especially on a, what may be a user's first mountain bike, including a shock pump makes a lot of sense. We got some zip ties here, and it looks like some padding. And in here, it looks like we have a torque wrench. So these function by kind of tensioning this metal here actually, and then it gives you a torque reading here based basically on that metal bending. So not quite as accurate probably as a true shop torque wrench, but I'm going to use it today so I can kind of test it out for you all and say, yeah, it works well, or this thing's really clunky. So let's get to building a bike. So this is all kind of nice like Velcro stuff here, so there's not actually tape to cut, which is pretty nice to get the front wheel off of here. Let's see, where's the end of this one? There it is. So yeah, it makes it easier to get this set up for sure. Start building this. So this is a nice touch to avoid front rotor getting bent here, because that is something that can commonly happen during shipping, but this shim put in there should prevent that. So we will obviously put the wheel in, and we will know then if the rotor is bent at all. But hopefully, we'll have a true rim because of that, or true rotor because of that. All right. So front wheel off. And then we have a dropper seat post here as well. So you can see this is kind of interesting. What Canyon is suggesting in their kind of Lego illustrations here is not pulling it all the way out of the box and then using kind of the bike box to stabilize things as you get the front handlebars on. And then they're talking about, putting carbon paste on if you need to, if you're working with a carbon bike. They don't really, I guess they kind of touch on, they touch on dropper post installation here. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently, of course, because we're going to put it in a bike stand actually and work on it in there. So we're going to get the dropper post hooked up first. That'll be our first step. But they do include kind of some good ideas on how to do this, and it's not like written instructions, which for the most part are pointless. And they actually seem to do a pretty good job in here of illustrating things. So good on them. GoPro, stop recording. All right, so let's see if we can get this dropper in, and that will allow us to get it up in the bike stand where we can work on everything else more easily and get everything set up. So we do have some tape here, actually, for some reason. That's a little annoying after working with all that Velcro. It's super nice. And the dropper post cable is already routed for us here, so that's super nice too. This bike has internal dropper cable routing, and I think it would probably be a relatively annoying bike to reroute cable fresh on. So it is definitely advantageous here that they have this already set up for us here. So there we go. And I'm actually going to do one thing here. You can see they include all the reflectors on everything. We of course take these off. This is a mountain bike meant to be ridden in the mountains where you're going to be using lights. So let's go ahead and take this off. There we go. All right. We have our cable here. And let's see how this one is designed. I want to check the instructions quick. So it looks like you need a 2mm Allen key. You kind of are using it as to push this down, I think. So they didn't include like a loose 2mm Allen. So I think I'm going to have to use my own. There might be a 2mm bit in here, but I'm not sure if that's going to work the same. So I'm going to grab my own. All right, yeah, so here's the setup that we have to kind of hold the actuator in place here so that we can get this set up. So that is one tool, I guess, that's kind of missing from what Canyon gave us here is this for setting up the dropper. But thankfully, I've got a lot of these hanging around, so no big deal. So this is kind of interesting on the handlebars themselves. We had a note about putting in the dropper, but they show the wrong type of actuator for the iridium dropper that's included in here, which I kind of wonder if that's a result of part shortages currently. Perhaps this documentation does not match up with the dropper that they ended up speccing. So a little bit interesting there. All right, there we go. Alright, so now we get to try out this torque wrench for the first time. So, this is what it looks like here. And then we've got some bits. Oh, nice set of bits. Okay, there we go. Yeah, seems to work. We're just getting it set up in the bike stand, so not a big deal at the moment. So let's get it set up, and then we'll take a look at things in more depth. There's a little note here about who assembled it, Frank C. Which is kind of nice. I've seen some where they actually handwrite a little note on it. That's even nicer. But hey, nice little touch anyways.
One eternity later.
Okay, I was genuinely confused about the cable routing there for a moment, but I think I have it sorted. We'll talk more about the purpose of this bike, but we do have a lot of cables up here for it being a pretty simple bike. So, but I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So let's grab our torque wrench again. All right, there we go. Alright, so I set up the handlebars. These handlebars just have a crosshair on them. They don't actually have gradient numbers on them. So I just set it up to the crosshairs because I figured that's how someone's going to set it up if they're just not sure what they're doing with their handlebar cockpit setup. That's what they'll do. So we'll see how close it is. We have a another reflector here. We got to get off. Get a screwdriver for that. And then we also have a dropper post lever that we have to figure out how we're gonna sneak into here. As you can see, this bike comes with a front lockout, so we gotta figure out what's gonna make the most sense for where we sneak this guy in. Yeah, I'm gonna finagle with that and see what we end up with. All right, so we need to get this front hub unwrapped. There we go. This is a RockShox Judy on here. Never ridden this fork before. It's a budget fork, and this is a budget bike overall. But I'll be getting into more why I'm interested in this bike overall. Okay, so there's the little spacer there for us. Pads are already installed in the brakes. Front wheel. Easy peasy. So just the minorest rub here without adjusting the brakes whatsoever. So we're almost right, just right out of the box. So not a bad job. Well, I've made quite a mess here. I'm gonna go and clean some of this up before we go along further. So I'll be back in just a sec.
A few moments later.
So now that we have the handlebars attached, let's clunk through some gears and see how this was set up from the factory. Looks pretty good. And honestly, I wouldn't expect anything else, you know, in my experience. As long as you don't have anything catastrophically wrong with your B-gap or something like that, you're gonna get good shifting out of this SRAM lower end stuff right out of the box. So, seems good. But of course we do have a dork disc on here, so we're going to go ahead and pull that off. This one, it looks pretty flimsy in comparison to some of the other ones I have seen on new bikes, so I'm thinking we might not need to pull off the rear wheel here. I think we can just cut this guy right off. So Canyon, good on you for putting on a flimsy spoke protector, so I don't have to take the cassette off first thing, like I do with most bikes that I build up. So that is super convenient. There we go. So I just wanted to highlight something kind of a little interesting here. These are actually pedals from the Canyon and a Polygon bike that I recently built up. And the stock pedals, you know, are never a big concern. But if you look at the Polygon pedal here, you can see that it has a driver hole in the middle of it, and it also has flats all the way around here to allow for easy attachment. The Canyon pedal, on the other hand, only comes with just a couple of flats for getting a wrench on, and nothing here in the middle for attaching it that way. So, you know, it's not a big deal. These pedals aren't going to stay on this bike anyways, but I do kind of like the little bit of extra pedal that was included with the Polygon. So I guess a big question probably is, why did I buy this bike? If you follow the channel at all, you know I traditionally ride more between trail and enduro bikes most of the time. something with between 130 and 160 millimeters of travel usually. But what I found is I did a little bit of cross-country racing this summer, and cross-country racing on an enduro bike isn't super fun. And I've also been toying with the idea of bike packing. And when I started trying to think about how I would fit everything onto an enduro bike that's already weighing close to 35 pounds, it was getting a little bit intimidating. So this bike here, the plan is for it to be my cross-country race bike and potentially bike packing bike as well. And in addition, for the channel, this is going to serve as a parts mule as well. So we get a lot of different components in that we need to test out, and so we just need bikes to put it on. So this is going to be a bike that we can fit a lot of components on, especially things that are more geared towards the cross-country end of the sport. So we're going to use this bike for a lot of those needs as well. So I'm excited to get on it here and give it a try. All right, so let's go through what we have here. This is the Canyon Grand Canyon, and this is the only version of the Grand Canyon that is sold in the United States. It was just released a couple of weeks ago, and I picked one up right away. So let's go through kind of head to toe here and talk about the specs. So as you can see, it is a hardtail 29er, and it comes equipped with a SRAM SX 12-speed drivetrain, and the cassette on here is also the Shimano traditional cassette body here. So we have the 450% range or so heavier cassette on here. We have Truvative cranks up front into a press fit bottom bracket. It looks like a SRAM Eagle chain ring with a 30-tooth front chain ring on it. The reach on this size medium is 435 millimeters, so it's a bit shorter than what I have been riding. If you've been watching what I do over at Everyday MTB, you'll know that my day-to-day bike is a medium Kona Process 153 from a couple of years ago, and so that's coming in at a 450 reach. So this bike is going to be a little bit shorter reach. So we're looking at a 74-degree seat tube angle and a head tube angle of 67.5. So actually a little bit more slacked out than some cross-country bikes on the market currently. And we're running a 120 millimeter RockShox Judy fork here instead of bikes from cross-country bikes like this from a few years ago. We would have seen a 100 millimeter fork on it. So a little bit more travel up front. So as you can see on that RockShox Judy fork, we have a remote lockout. So that runs up here to a thumb lever right up there. So this is the first bike that I've had with a RockShox lockout system. So this is the lever for it here. You can see if we press this and then keep pressing kind of beyond where we are here, this little lock here pops out, and that turns the actuator down here. And then to get it to unlock, we need to press this button as opposed to doing anything with the thumb switch. It pops back, and then the lockout is unlocked here as well. The brakes here are Shimano MT400, so actually a little bit of upgrade from what you would see on a lot of entry-level bikes. You would see the Shimano MT200 or perhaps something from Tektro, but a little bit nicer brake here. And then those are paired with a 180 millimeter rotor in the back and 180 millimeter rotor in the front and a 160 millimeter rotor in the back. As mentioned previously, we have a Iridium dropper post in here with a Canyon house brand saddle. I just noticed this earlier. This is kind of interesting. On the back through axle, to remove it, it actually doesn't have a hex key slot. Instead, you pull this guy out here and lock it over like that, and that allows you to remove your rear through axle. So that is another thing to note. This bike is fully boost and has through axles front and rear. So all set for all the modern specs. So that is very nice. So on the tire side of thing here, we have a Schwalbe Rapid Rob in the back, and I believe a 2.2, I believe. And I'm looking at these, and I think they may not be tubeless ready, so a little bit of a bummer there. And then up front here, we have a Schwalbe Tough Tom, and yeah, not seeing the tubeless ready logo on them. So we obviously have some tubes in here, and that's the way they're running right now. So a couple of other details here. There is some plastic frame protection on the top of the chainstay. Looks like there is nothing here on the bottom of the chainstay, however, so nothing for the bottom of the chain slap in there, but at least a tiny bit of protection here for the top. We might go ahead and add some more protection there. All right, so there we go. This is fully stock with the demo pedals on it and tubes in the tires, and we are looking at 30.26 pounds for a stock build of this bike. We're of course going to be doing some experimenting from here on out and getting that weight down. All right, so I've just started working kind of on the fit and finish of this bike a little bit, and first adjustment I made is I want one however many mil spacer this is, I think it's a 10 mil spacer down here, and then rotated the handlebars, as you can see, a little bit away from those original cross hatches. The original rotation looked and felt very European, which I guess this is a Canyon. Hey, well, what did you expect? So that's one adjustment I made. Also on this side here with the shifter and brake, the shifter came mounted inboard from the brake lever, and I started sliding my levers in order to get to a good one finger position here. And as I slid it in enough to get to a good one finger position, the shifter was way out of reach. So move that, took the grip off, move this out. That is the one kind of downside of these more budget SRAM and Shimano components, is you have to take your grips off in order to make changes like that, which is a little annoying. Then over on the other side, I shifted everything inboard. Everything's basically slammed together here on this side, so you can see that. I'm not sure, this lockout lever might come outboard over here. I haven't ridden a ton with a lockout lever in the past, so I want to leave it the way they intended it to start out with, and then I'm going to go from there and see what I think. So out of the box here, we did kind of end up with a rat's nest up here, and Canyon did include some zip ties, so I'm going to go through here and see if I can clean this and tidy this up a bit. So that is looking quite a bit tidier there. You have some varying lengths here. Like this is a little bit annoying here, but I mean, yeah, it is what it is. I also shifted stuff around here, so that may have affected some too. But it does look much better. Good start.